I don't always allow myself to be sucked into social media debates, but when I do, it's usually a conversation about guns. A young woman that I've tried hard to help through some really ugly family issues that have left her and her young son vulnerable to the erratic whims of a series of bad boyfriends, has tried to convince me that her current flame is the one. And truly, no one would be happier about it if I could convince myself that it were true, but their most recent posts on social media have been about Prince Charming taking her to the gun range to help her to learn how to handle the new handgun that he has given to her to keep in her apartment with her severely ADD elementary school-age son, who, quite frankly, has never spent more than 5 minutes in my house without finding a way to slip away and find a TV remote where he can download inappropriate pay-per-view movies. Given his penchant for following the rules, I felt the need to point out to her that whenever a woman has a gun in her home, that she increases her chances of being shot and killed by 1,700%. There is a reason, of course, why America has more than 40,000 gun deaths every year, and places like Japan usually average somewhere around 7. The proliferation of guns increases the number of gun deaths. The more guns that are in a country, the more people die of gunshot wounds. Every gun owner in the world seems to imagine themselves to be John Wick and believe that they are able to kill 80 or more bad guys in a 90-minute film without sustaining a wound that more than slows them down for a few moments. But the majority of gun deaths, as you can see on this chart, are self-inflicted because there's a lot of depression in America, particularly among gun owners, and not a small amount of drug and alcohol abuse. Suicide is the most common lethal use of a gun in America. Murder is second. Accidents are third. And the legitimate self-defense of yourself or your home is the tiniest fraction of the total number of deaths from gunshot wounds. And it's well documented that there are more accidental deaths from guns than legitimate self-defense. Last year, 220 people were shot by their preschool-age children, usually with a very cleverly hidden gun that had multiple safety features thrown in, and still when the press interviews the family, someone is sure to say, well, that gun wasn't even loaded. But this is not a sermon about gun safety. What I want to talk about today is faith and belief. And this seems like a really good example to me. Gun owners are a perfect example of people who have passionate beliefs. They believe in things that are demonstrably not true. They believe what they believe about their guns because they want to believe these things about their guns. They believe what they believe because they like how their guns make them feel. An insecure man can compensate for what he doesn't have in his underwear with what he can sling over his shoulder or put in a holster. A frightened woman can believe that she has suddenly become the Black Widow because she has a cheap handgun and has spent 90 minutes practicing on the gun range. Any sincere look at the facts, even for just a few minutes, will clearly demonstrate that a person dramatically reduces their safety by owning a gun. But you know, this is really a matter of faith. And around here in this part of the country, it's a matter of religion. And not a matter that can be affected much by reason or information or facts. They believe what they believe because they want to believe it, and they believe it because of how it makes them feel. Their faith doesn't make them bulletproof, but it does appear to make them immune to facts. As the magician James Randi opined, those who believe without reason cannot be convinced by reason. If you reach firm beliefs based on personal whims and preferences, hard data will not touch your convictions. Consider the fact that there were more than 60 million people in America who voted for Donald Trump and more than 70 million that voted for him the second time. More than 60 million people voted for Donald Trump twice. They voted for him a second time after they saw what he did the first 4 years in the White House. Now, let me also ask you to consider that those 70 million people, by and large, own a lot of guns. Do you feel more secure? Here in the Ozarks, where we have been in the national news a lot lately, because only about 36% of the people in our area have been vaccinated against COVID, and we now have the highest transmission rate in the country of the deadly Delta variant of COVID. But many of our locals believe it as a matter of faith, that they know more about the vaccines than the virologists and the scientists who develop the vaccines. And they would rather take their chances with the virus than with the vaccine, and some will even explain that they don't know what's in it. These same people will line up at Sonic to buy hot dogs, but they don't want to put something in their body if they don't know what's in it. Even with our local hospital COVID wards filled to capacity so that we are burning up the highways with ambulances speeding patients to hospitals in St. Louis and Kansas City, they have faith that God will protect them, I suppose, and if God's busy, maybe they can shoot the virus as it tries to get into their lungs. And this, I will submit, is why the Mensa Club never holds their national conventions in Springfield. Now, I don't typically walk around with my views printed on my shirts, but I've made an exception during the pandemic. I have this one that says, "Science doesn't care what you believe." I have it as a t-shirt, I have it as a long sleeve shirt, and I have it as a hoodie because I want to be able to wear it every day regardless of the weather. But this is not really a contest between science, facts, objective thinking in opposition to religion, because it isn't just religion that falls prey to believing things without reason, or worse, against reason, against the evidence. People believe a lot of things that are false when they want to believe them. They like to believe them. But how those false beliefs make them feel has nothing to do with whether the beliefs are true or false. People will say that everyone has a right to their own opinion. And in a free country, I suppose that you do have a right to your own opinion. But that doesn't mean that opinions are of equal value. It doesn't mean that an uninformed opinion has the same merit as an informed opinion. Please allow me once again to cite the great Dane, Soren Kierkegaard, who said that there are two ways to be fooled. One is to believe what is not true. The other is to refuse to believe what is true. Right now, all of our hospital COVID wards are full, and yet none of those patients were vaccinated. And yet any one of them who's over the age of 12, and we've now actually got a 1-year-old in the hospital here in Springfield, but any one of them that's over the age of 12 could go to any Walgreens or CVS drugstore in town and receive a vaccine at no charge without even making an appointment. It couldn't be easier. And yet 2 out of 3 of our neighbors are unprotected because they have allowed themselves to believe things that are truly stupid. Now, they have a right to believe it, and I suppose they have a legal right to not be vaccinated, but somehow that gives them a legal right to incubate variants of the disease that could kill innocent children. In the world of religion, we talk a lot about belief and faith, and all too often those words are associated with choosing to believe in things for which there is no evidence, or even to have faith in things for which there is a great deal of evidence that it's not true. Some of our favorite religious scholars, including Karen Armstrong and the late Marcus Borg, have spent a great deal of time documenting the fact that the words belief and faith should not be taken as a matter of assassinating your brains so that you can believe in things that are clearly not true. Karen Armstrong describes early Christian baptisms in which the newly baptized is lowered into the water, and when they are pulled back up, they shout the word in Greek, pistis, which we translate as faith. In the Bible, we call pistis faith, but in the context in which it was used in the early church, you have to see that it means something like courage or conviction, or perhaps more fully, the courage of your convictions. The ancient church wrote creeds to describe the Christian faith. In fact, the Apostles' Creed in Latin begins with the word credo, which we translate as saying, I believe. I believe in God the Father Almighty, creator of heaven and earth. But again, this was not a claim in the literal facts of virgin birth or bodily resurrection. Marcus Borg insists that we should understand this use of the word credo as meaning I belove rather than I believe. Because you can love the Catholic Church for what it has meant in your life without believing that the Pope is infallible, or that you have to be opposed to women's reproductive rights. You can love your Jewish faith community without believing that God literally divided the Red Sea so that the Israelites could escape Egypt, or that Moses caused water to flow from a rock and bread to fall down from heaven. You can love your Muslim faith community without believing that Muhammad flew on a winged horse up to heaven. In our time, people will find the basic tenets of the Christian religion to be impossible to believe. If you introduce an adult to the basic claims of traditional Christian faith, they won't buy it. And most of the people who grew up in the church will say something like, I have lost my faith. But I don't think that's a good use of the word. I don't believe in a supernatural theistic God, and I'm a pastor. I don't believe in angels, demons, souls, heaven, or hell, but I am a person of faith. I don't believe in things that I know don't exist. That's not a matter of faith. That's just refusing to be stupid. But I do have courage, and I do have commitment to what my religious life represents, which is justice and mercy and liberty and the equality of all human beings and freedom and love and unity and respect and compassion and a cherishing of the earth itself and all of life. I have a lot of faith. That just doesn't mean that I'm willing to believe in silly things. Christian communion, the Jewish Passover, a Muslim Hajj, all symbolically reenact the sacred stories of their faith tradition. And while many Christians may take the account of the Passion as being literal history, or Jews may believe that the destroying angel actually did kill the firstborn of Egypt at the time of the Passover, or Muslims may think that Muhammad made the devil run away by throwing stones at him, I trust that most people are engaging in these rituals of communion and Passover and the Hajj in order to connect themselves to a faith community that they identify with, that they feel committed to, rather than believing literally that bread and wine become the body and blood of Jesus, or that a powerful evil demon will run away if you throw rocks at him. A community of faith almost always has shared sacred stories, but the power of those stories does not rely on their historical accuracy. Frankly, to do so would be to embrace a denial of reality, and that's just not what religion ought to be about. Religion should not be about a separate reality. It should not be inviting parishioners to literally embrace stupidity. Honestly, I look forward to some Christmas in the future when I will attend a Christmas Eve service and just experience the light and the dark the carols, the lessons, the choirs, and the candles. But I can't right now, and I have not for many years, because those fables were taught to me as history. And they, along with a whole truckload of myths and lies, twisted my perception of reality and retarded my intellectual growth for a lot of years. So I can't hear those carols or see those decorations right now without some real anger. But I don't want it to stay that way. I want to find a time in the future when I can go with friends to a midnight mass on Christmas Eve and just enjoy the beauty of the liturgy. You can love the community. You can enjoy the tradition, literally the bells and smells of your faith, without trying to turn beautiful stories into factual accounts. The progressive church can be resolved never again to pass along unbelievable myths as facts to another generation. But I want to leave room so that we can celebrate the rituals and seasons that are associated with our faith roots, our tribe, our tradition. I don't have an appetite for it right now. I would tell you if I did. I just don't. But I know that I want it. I know that I want to get there. My old friend, Charles Hedrick, and my newer friend, Bishop John Shelby Spong, are both founding members of the Jesus Seminar. They are both historical and biblical scholars, and they have often spoken here at our church because they are the kind of credible thinkers that have really been mentors to me and to our faith community. But in a private dinner one night, Bishop Spong asked me, "Why does Charlie still go to a Baptist church?" Because I had asked Charlie myself many times in many different ways, I was able to tell Bishop Spong. Charlie long ago divorced himself from the beliefs and practices of the Baptist church, and in fact, his Baptist church has told him that he is not allowed to speak there or to even ask questions in his Sunday school class. But Charlie will tell you his friends are there, and he wants to stay connected to them. He also envisions a Baptist church that someday may become better than the Baptist church of today. And he just doesn't want to give up on it. Before Charlie retired to Kansas City to be near his daughters, I regularly had lunch with him at the university, and he asked me once, "Why does John Spong still go to the Episcopal Church? He can't possibly have any shared beliefs with them." And because I'd had this very conversation with Bishop Spong at the dinner table in my house, I was able to tell Charlie his friends are there, and he has a long history with that church. And though it has largely rejected him, we've had Bishop Spong here in town 3 times to speak, and not a single Episcopal priest has ever attended any of these conferences right here in town, and we've got a bunch of Episcopal churches here. So I told him, the Baptist church has rejected Charlie in much the same way that the Episcopal church has rejected you. But he still wants to see it become a better Episcopal church than it is today. I will never return to my mother denomination. I respect the decisions that Charlie and John have made because they have chosen connection to community. And I think we should all make a choice like that. I just need to find a better community to be connected to. While we exist here in the emerging church as a resource to thousands of listeners scattered around the globe, I encourage all of you to not let this YouTube channel or this iTunes channel be your only connection to a faith community. Find your tribe. Love your people. Try to tolerate their faults and fables, but don't ever stop hoping for them to also become a better church. The church needs to abandon its history of dishonesty and embrace an honest approach to theology and to life. That's what I'm hoping for, and that's why I want to keep kicking at the darkness until it bleeds daylight.
Thank you for watching our videos. We are entirely dependent on the donations of our listeners and members. We hope that you find this content to be important enough to help us to keep offering these videos to the public at no charge by becoming a regular contributor. Please click on the donate button on our website at www.spfccc.org. Thank you for your support of progressive religious programming.